CNN host Jake Tapper smeared Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib with a baseless attack, appearing to push the idea that Rashida Tlaib is anti-Semitic for being critical of the Israeli government and their treatment of Palestinians. So before I get to the attack and that exchange, let me first show you how this all started. So the news that came out, Tony Blinken being Joe Biden's Secretary of State, Rashida Tlaib replying to that news, saying, so long as he doesn't suppress my First Amendment right to speak out against Netanyahu's racist and inhumane policies, the Palestinian people deserve equality and justice. Now, there is a reason why she raised this point, because if you look in Tony Blinken's history, he has worked with defense contractors that have been close to Israel. Now, before I even get to any of that, or any of his previous comments on the issue of the Israeli government and Netanyahu, let me first show you how Rashida Tlaib further explains her point here, saying, Secretary Pompeo has moved to suppress BDS, a peaceful protest movement protected by the First Amendment. I hope that Mr. Blinken and President-elect Biden's administration will change course from Trump's State Department and not target or suppress support of Palestinian human rights. So, again, giving you more context here for why Rashida Tlaib is worried or concerned, or at least raising questions about what Tony Blinken will do in that same role. Now, Jake Tapper. In fact, this is his second tweet. Let me show you the initial tweet that he deleted. So he initially replied to Rashida Tlaib saying this. Why is it? I think he means what is it? What is it about Secretary of State nominee Blinken that makes the Congresswoman think he would try to suppress her views about the Prime Minister of Israel? Now, clearly Jake Tapper here is trying to allude to the fact that Blinken is Jewish and that this is the reason that Rashida Tlaib is critical of him, not the fact that Blinken has made comments in the past before defending the Israeli government or has worked closely with the Israeli Defense Force. Not pointing that out at all. Just appearing to push the idea that, oh yeah, Rashida Tlaib, of course, anti-Semitic for being critical of a government. Again, you cannot be anti-Semitic for being critical of the Israeli government. It is being critical of a government. The idea that you can somehow connect the Israeli government to Jewish identity is completely ridiculous. You have to be able to be critical of a government, and that's what Rashida Tlaib here is doing. Now, Jake Tapper updated that tweet, deleted that tweet, put this one out instead, saying Blinken and Biden are both on the record opposing efforts to punish/sanction BDS, though they also oppose BDS. Like, how this just... Like, this is part of Rashida Tlaib's point. But anyways, going on, he says, so I'm not sure what it is about Blinken that would prompt this tweet. Well, first of all, maybe this, that they both oppose BDS. But also, again, if Jake Tapper did any research at all as a journalist, he would understand why Rashida Tlaib is concerned. And if you go through the replies on this tweet, again, I link to all this below the video. You can check out the replies to Jake Tapper yourself. You see the backlash. Walker Bragman, another journalist here, tweeting out in reply to Jake Tapper saying Blinken attended an AIPAC luncheon in 2016 where he boasted of U.S. efforts to block anti-Israel resolutions at the UN. Again, this is why, or part of the reason why Rashida Tlaib raised these questions. And you can see the tweet here, or the speech here from Tony Blinken. So just reading this paragraph, Blinken said, every year at the UN in New York and its various governing bodies, the U.S. has taken the lead in either successfully blocking anti-Israel resolutions, 16 in the last UNGA session alone, or brokering resolutions on which Israel can agree. And often we are there alone, standing in defense of Israel. Now, first of all, successfully blocking anti-Israel resolutions. These are oftentimes what these resolutions are resolutions that are critical of what the Israeli government is doing to Palestinians, critical of how the Israeli government is treating Gaza and the West Bank. That's what these are. And there is a reason why the U.S. is often there alone, standing in defense of Israel. It's because they're on the wrong side of the issue. You would think if every other country in the UN is against you, maybe you're wrong. But no, the way the U.S. sees this, the way Israel sees this, no, they're right and everybody else is wrong. Their position of committing human rights abuses against Palestinians, of keeping them in an open-air prison in Gaza, perfectly fine. When other countries are critical of that and don't stand in defense of you, they're the crazy ones. Yet, again, How can you not clue into the reality that if there's only two of you there in defense of this, in defense of the actions that the Israeli government is doing, maybe you are on the wrong side of history? But there's even more to this. So in Tony Blinken's past, he has worked with multinational corporations and defense contractors. So he launched a firm after leaving the Obama Biden White House. He started West Exec Advisors. This is a political strategy firm. And here are some of the companies they worked with, including one of the clients, an Israeli artificial intelligence company, Windward, with surveillance software that tracks ships in real time. Two former Israeli naval intelligence officers established the company in 2010. Gabi Ashkenazi, former chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Forces, serves on its board. Windward also claims former CIA director David Petraeus as an investor, as well as a Hong Kong billionaire. So again, Tony Blinken worked closely with somebody who was in the Israeli Defense Forces, worked closely with this intelligence company. Again, part of the reason why Rashida Tlaib is raising these questions about how Tony Blinken will feel about critiques of the Israeli government and how they treat Palestinians. Now, to go further into this, Abraham Gottman here. This is a journalist. Let me get his title. So he's from the Philly Inquirer, journalist from Philly Inquirer, tweeting out here, as a Jewish person, his thoughts. He says, "Hi, Jew here, Israeli Jew. This from Rashida Tlaib is not anti-Semitic, as some trolls responded, nor should it be controversial. The Israeli occupation of Palestine is one of the longest ongoing U.S.-backed atrocities. Backlash to any criticism of it is the real cancel culture." He goes on to say, if Biden really views itself as a traditional administration, as a transitional administration, he should quickly come to realize that discourse on Israel has changed, even among younger American Jews. He doesn't only have the political permission to say no to Netanyahu, it's also just the right thing to do. And he ends saying, Biden shouldn't get to just maintain the status quo. He needs to reverse the clock and impose conditions on Israel. The minimum should be no aid as long as settlements are being built and Israel refuses to negotiate. That's not radical. That's 1990s two-states centrism. So again, this also shows you, this gives you the context in terms of how far right the conversation has moved when it comes to Israel-Palestine. Because now any criticism of the Israeli government is being construed by people like Jake Tapper as being anti-Semitic. Last thing here, Raphael tweets out saying, apropos of nothing at all, here is the old petition where tens of thousands of Americans called on CNN to hold Jake Tapper accountable for his demonstrable anti-Palestinian bigotry. Jake Tapper has a long history of this. This is an old, I'm not even sure what year this is from, but this is an old petition. So possibly 2017, maybe last year, 2019. But Jake Tapper has a history of doing this, of comments like this. And in fact, if you go into some of the replies here, there's a reply I didn't share because it was a screenshot of a tweet that was deleted by the journalist that tweeted it. But it was a journalist discussing a couple of years ago how he had heard from a source that Jake Tapper had called for more critical coverage of Muslim congresspeople. So, again, I didn't want to share that here, but if you go into the replies, you can see it. But I didn't share it just in case maybe it wasn't true, as the journalist did delete it. But also, you can see why maybe he doesn't want to face any potential backlash from Jake Tapper for outing that information. But regardless of what it is, you can go into the tweets, see the replies, and see how hypercritical people are. Because again, being critical of the Israeli government and their allies is not at all anti-Semitic. This idea that being critical of a government can somehow be anti-Semitic is just complete bullshit.